a luxurious mansion, standing alone on the edge of a beautiful coastal cliff. Inside the house, a young woman named Lupe wakes up after being unconscious. She is confused and disoriented, until a man named Simon helps her while still trying to free himself. But soon they realize they are not alone. There are others trapped with them too. A flight attendant named Teresa, a surgeon named Armando, an old man named Jose, and Lupe's own parents, Esteban and Martha. Simon tries to find a way out, but the door will not open. And when they look through the window, they discover something even more terrifying. They are trapped on the edge of a cliff, on an unknown island with no idea where they are. Everyone is still confused, with no clue what has happened to them. The only thing they remember is being knocked unconscious, then waking up in this place. Teresa remembers she was on her way to work for a flight when someone suddenly attacked her. Armando also remembers being taken the same way, but he never saw the person's face. Lupe, who has just started college, begins to panic, while her parents try to calm her down. Esteban believes this is only about money, assuming the kidnappers want a ransom from him. But then Jose suddenly says this is not about money. Whoever brought them here only wants them to suffer. And to prove it, he shows them his fingernails, which have already been ripped out. That is when Armando starts thinking that all of them might have something in common, something connected to the kidnapper. So one by one, they introduce themselves. Simon is a police officer from Mexico City. Esteban is a wealthy businessman who believes money can get him anything. Teresa is a flight attendant. Armando is a surgeon. And Jose simply says he is retired. Not long after, a box suddenly lights up, revealing a letter inside. The message says they have been brought there to play a game. There are only 3 simple rules. First, they must choose one person to die. Second, the person chosen must agree to die. And third, no one is allowed to volunteer themselves. If they refuse to play, they will all be killed. From that moment, they have 60 minutes to decide. So welcome to Death's Roulette. Panic spreads quickly among them. Martha and Esteban try to calm everyone down, insisting that this must be a scheme to extort money. But after seeing the condition of Jose's fingers, Armando becomes convinced that this is not about money at all. The situation grows tense as they begin accusing each other, arguing over who should be chosen to die. At one point, Teresa suggests that a man should be the one to sacrifice himself first. She points at Simon, arguing that as a police officer, he has a duty to protect others. But suddenly, Jose steps forward and offers himself instead. Most of them agree with that decision, except for Lupe. She hesitates and asks whether Jose has any family. It turns out he has no one left. Even so, Lupe refuses to accept that he should be chosen simply because he is old. The debate continues, with everyone trying to justify why their own life matters more. Armando is a surgeon who saves lives. Martha argues that her company supports tens of thousands of employees, meaning her survival affects far more people. Each person begins measuring human worth in their own way. Then Jose interrupts and urges them to stop arguing. He insists they should just vote and choose him. He claims his life has already been filled with hardship and mistakes that cannot be forgiven. When Simon tries to ask what he has done, Jose refuses to explain, suggesting he has been living with guilt all along. And then without warning, Jose is suddenly shot and killed. Moments later, a voice from the speaker announces that they have broken the 3rd rule by allowing someone to volunteer. Because of that, the game must continue. Esteban, now desperate, starts offering money, promising millions of dollars in exchange for their freedom. But Armando quickly shuts that down, reminding him that money means nothing in this place. Not long after, the door finally opens. Inside, they step into a strange, luxurious room filled with children's toys and unsettling decorations. It feels out of place, almost like a twisted playground. While searching the room, Armando finds a puzzle along with an envelope. Inside are instructions telling them to answer a series of personal questions, then arrange the answers into a grid of letters. With Simon's help, Armando begins reading them one by one. The first question asks for Esteban's family name, which turns out to be Ferreira. The second reveals Teresa's addiction, which is amphetamines. The third question exposes Lupe's secret. She never graduated high school and forged her diploma. The fourth question digs into Simon's past, revealing that he once betrayed a fellow officer by reporting his corrupt partner, a man named Lorenzo. Then comes a question about Martha's sibling. At first, Lupe believes her mother is an only child, but Martha finally admits she had a sister named Ophelia, who died before Lupe was born. This revelation shocks Lupe, who had never heard about her before. The sixth question asks about Jose's identity. At first they are confused since he is already dead. But then Esteban recalls that Jose described himself as retired, which in Spanish translates to jubilado. The questions continue, uncovering Teresa's drug supplier, Elfo, and exposing another hidden truth about Armando, a serious illness he has been keeping secret. Even he is shaken by how much the kidnapper knows about him. The final question reveals Esteban's affair with his own secretary, a woman named Alejandra. Once all the answers are placed into the grid, they form a name, Pablo Vega. But no one recognizes it. Simon then notices something and adjusts one of the letters. The name changes into Pablo Vega. At that moment, Simon realizes who they are dealing with. Pablo Vega is a notorious serial killer who believes he is delivering justice. In the past, Simon and the police tried to catch him, but he always slipped away like a ghost. Pablo targeted judges, politicians, prosecutors, anyone connected to corruption. And he did not just kill them, he tortured them in brutal ways, leaving behind a trail of fear wherever he went. Simon then continues, revealing a dark moment from his past. Years ago, during a night operation to capture Pablo, he and his team broke into a house and saw a shadowy figure. Believing it was Pablo, Simon fired without hesitation, but he later realized he had killed the wrong person. The victim was Pablo's wife. That is when Simon understands why he has been brought here. Pablo has been holding on to that grudge all this time. After Simon confesses his mistake, it becomes clear that he is not the only one with a connection to Pablo. Armando soon realizes he has one too. The name Pablo Vega leads him to remember Patricia Vega, a patient he once treated after a hit-and-run accident. She died on his operating table. Then Teresa suddenly recognizes the name as well. She admits that she was the one who caused the hit-and-run. At the time, she panicked and fled the scene. But she insists that Patricia was still alive when she left, only suffering from broken bones. Later, Teresa returned out of guilt, but Patricia had already been taken to the hospital. From what Teresa learned afterward, Patricia's injuries were not fatal, meaning her death did not come from the accident. That leads her to accuse Armando, suggesting that a mistake during surgery is what actually killed Pablo's mother. Armando, angered by this accusation, immediately turns against Teresa and pushes for her to be chosen as the next sacrifice, blaming her reckless actions and her addiction. But just as the tension rises, a light suddenly turns on, and a recorded testimony begins to play. It is the voice of a nurse who assisted during Patricia's surgery. The recording reveals the truth. Patricia had fractures in both legs and suffered from arrhythmia. During the procedure, Armando inserted an endotracheal tube, but placed it incorrectly. The nurse and technician tried to warn him, but he refused to listen. His mistake caused fatal damage, ultimately leading to Patricia's death. That moment becomes the turning point. It is revealed that Pablo, still a teenager at the time, learned about his mother's death and began planning his revenge from that day forward. In the end, Armando apologizes, admitting that he is no different from Simon. Both of them, in their own way, caused the death of someone Pablo loved, even if it was not intentional. But the argument quickly starts again, as they try to decide who should be sacrificed next. At first, most of them lean toward choosing either Armando or Simon. Then Armando shifts the blame, suggesting that Esteban should be the one instead, and Teresa supports that idea, pointing out his unfaithful behavior. Martha immediately refuses to accept it. Despite everything, she still stands by Esteban, believing their relationship cannot be broken so easily. Seeing the tension rising again, Simon steps in and tries to bring the focus back. He reminds them that everyone there has done something that connects them to Pablo. The guilt of Simon, Armando, and Teresa is already clear. But the question now is, what about the others? That is when Martha finally reveals a hidden piece of the past. She explains that Patricia Vega, Pablo's mother, once worked as a maid in their household. At some point, Patricia became pregnant and later returned to her hometown. This revelation immediately sparks suspicion. Armando suggests that Esteban might be the one responsible for the pregnancy, something Esteban quickly denies. But Teresa finds the theory convincing, raising the possibility that Pablo could actually be Esteban's son. This idea leaves Lupe confused and unsettled as she begins to question everything she thought she knew. Not long after, another door opens, leading them into a new room. This time they are told to search for the full truth hidden within it. They split up, examining strange paintings and clues scattered around the walls. Lupe notices an unsettling image of a child carrying the head of an old man, which seems to reflect Pablo's life and the trauma he endured with his mother. Meanwhile, Teresa is reminded of her own child. Because of her addiction, her family fell apart, and her child is now being raised by her ex-husband. Financial struggles have made things even harder, especially since her child dreams of becoming an engineer. Elsewhere, Armando studies another set of illustrations, showing Pablo killing judges, politicians, and prosecutors, hanging them from government buildings as a form of twisted justice. As he continues searching, he finds photographs, including one of Ophelia and another of Esteban and Martha, during a trip to Paris. Curious, Lupe takes a closer look and realizes the photos are real. What confuses her even more is how Pablo refers to Esteban and Martha as his uncle and aunt in those images. That is when Lupe begins to suspect something deeper. She wonders if Pablo could actually be part of her own family, possibly her cousin, and whether Ophelia might be the missing link. Esteban tries to brush it off, claiming that Ophelia had many problems. But his response only makes things feel even more suspicious. The others begin pressuring Esteban to finally tell the truth, but he reacts with anger instead of answers. Then Simon discovers a photo of a psychiatric hospital, with a note revealing that Pablo was born there. That finding forces Martha to confess what she has been hiding. She admits that her sister, Ophelia, struggled with severe depression. Because of that, Martha and their father sent her away to a mental institution and never visited her again. While she was there, something terrible happened. Ophelia was abused, which led to her becoming pregnant. She later gave birth to a baby boy, marked by a birthmark on his arm. Not long after, Ophelia died. Instead of taking responsibility for the child, Martha abandoned her own nephew. The baby was left behind and eventually cared for by a nurse named Patricia Vega. Martha ignored everything, even refusing to attend her own sister's funeral. As the truth comes out, the others turn against her. Teresa especially cannot hold back, pointing out that Martha's cruelty helped shape the very person who is now tormenting them. At the same time, the clock is running out. They can no longer keep arguing about who is most guilty. A decision has to be made. Martha then tries to persuade Teresa to sacrifice herself. She promises to fund Teresa's child's education and secure their future, offering a life-changing amount of money in exchange for her death. But Teresa refuses. She sees through it, realizing that even if her child benefits from that money, it would only come at the cost of becoming like the very people she despises. In the end, Simon votes for Esteban. Armando and Teresa follow. Esteban accepts his fate, but Martha refuses to let him go. She insists that she is the one who carries the greatest guilt for abandoning both Ophelia and Pablo. Finally, the group agrees that Martha will be the sacrifice, each of them expressing regret for what they have done. But something unexpected happens. The timer stops, yet Martha is not executed. Instead, a door opens, revealing a staircase leading upstairs. At the top, they find a table filled with luxurious food, as if they are being invited to sit down and eat. The name Pablo Vega was wrong, corrected into Pablo Vega, which leads him to a disturbing realization about the meaning behind it. The truth finally comes out. Jose was not just an old retired man. He was a former psychiatrist who abused Ophelia while she was in the mental institution, the same abuse that led to her pregnancy. That means Pablo Vega is actually Jose's biological son. This revelation shocks everyone, especially Lupe, who had defended Jose earlier without knowing the truth. Not long after, Simon accidentally cuts his hand on a knife while reaching for food. Armando picks it up and notices something written on it, a message telling them to do it themselves. It becomes clear that they are expected to carry out the execution on their own. With only 10 minutes left, they have no choice. Armando prepares to kill Martha, but Esteban steps in to stop him. The situation quickly turns into a violent struggle between the two. In the end, Esteban manages to stab Armando, leaving him critically wounded. Let him go! As Armando lies there, barely holding on, Teresa urges him to accept his fate. If he agrees, the others might still survive. Realizing he has no chance of making it, Armando finally accepts. The group votes and Esteban carries out the final act, killing him. Yes, push it through. Soon after, the exit door opens. Simon removes the knife, and Teresa quietly expresses regret over what has just happened. With no time to waste, they all rush to find a way out. Behind them, Armando's body is approached by the same armed figures who have been watching over the game. Once outside, they finally breathe fresh air again. But instead of freedom, they find themselves trapped in a massive labyrinth that stretches endlessly in every direction. Esteban decides they should split up, hoping it will increase their chances of escape. Meanwhile, the mysterious enforcers prepare to hunt them down. Gunshots echo through the maze, triggering panic. Oh shit! Teresa runs off on her own, leaving Simon momentarily unsure of what to do. As she searches for a way out, she finds a staircase and climbs it, only to see nothing but forest and ocean surrounding her. Her withdrawal begins to kick in, and she tries to take her medication. But in the process, she drops it. She nearly gets caught, but somehow manages to stay hidden, at least for the moment. As the danger continues to close in, eventually Teresa stumbles upon a narrow path. Thinking she has finally found a way out, she runs toward it without hesitation. But suddenly she collides with someone. It is Simon. In that moment, everything starts to connect in her mind. She realizes that Simon has always been there, quietly guiding events, shaping the situation from within. The truth becomes impossible to ignore. Overwhelmed, Teresa breaks down and apologizes for what she did in the past. She admits her mistake, leaving a woman on the road after hitting her, and begs for a chance to make things right. But Simon, who is actually Pablo, does nothing. He simply walks away, leaving her behind, just like she once did to his mother. Meanwhile, Lupe and her parents manage to reach the shoreline. There they find a small fishing boat and rush toward it, desperate to escape. For the first time, it feels like they might actually make it out alive. They start the engine, ready to leave, when Simon suddenly appears in the distance, calling out to them. Esteban considers leaving him behind, but Lupe insists they wait. She has no idea who Simon really is. When he finally reaches them, Simon points out that the anchor is still down. As he removes his jacket, something catches Martha's attention, a birthmark on his arm. At that moment, the truth becomes undeniable. Simon is Pablo Vega. Now standing before them with 2 guns in his hands, Pablo reveals himself fully. The man they thought was another victim has been in control all along. And just when they think it is over, he introduces one final game. A small pistol with a single bullet. Each of them must take turns pulling the trigger, with no way of knowing when the bullet will fire. If they refuse, Lupe will be the one to pay the price. And as always, the first turn belongs to the woman. At first, Martha hesitates. She cannot bring herself to pull the trigger properly, unable to face what she is being forced to do. Seeing this, Pablo shifts the focus and begins exposing a much darker truth. He reveals that Esteban's so-called affairs were not what they seemed. The woman named Alejandra was not just a secretary. She was actually one of Lupe's school friends. And she was not the only one. There were others too, girls from the same circle, all connected in the same disturbing way. What was once dismissed as infidelity is revealed to be something far worse. The truth hits Lupe hard. She breaks down, realizing that she herself had been one of his victims all along. The man responsible is not a stranger, but her own father. Even then, Martha continues to defend Esteban, desperately trying to justify his actions and protect him. When she cannot go through with the game, the gun is passed to Esteban. Without hesitation, he pulls the trigger, but nothing happens. The chamber is empty. That moment exposes everything about him. His willingness to act without remorse only confirms what Pablo has been trying to show all along. Not long after, the armed enforcers arrive, but to everyone's surprise, Lupe orders them to stand down. It is then revealed that she has been part of this plan from the very beginning. Through tears, she finally releases everything she has kept buried for years. She speaks about the abuse she suffered as a child, how Esteban repeatedly hurt her, and how she was forced to live with that trauma in silence. What makes it even worse is that Martha knew. She chose to ignore it, pretending nothing was wrong, allowing the cycle to continue. Now all that pain comes to the surface. Esteban stands there in silence, overwhelmed by shame and regret. But it is too late for redemption. Lupe cannot bring herself to end his life, so Pablo steps in and finishes it. At the same time, Martha is subjected to the same kind of suffering that Ofelia once endured, a cruel reflection of the past she tried to forget. In the end, the bodies are buried within the grounds. The story closes with Pablo and Lupe watching the sun set together, as if finally letting go of the pain that shaped their lives.